Hey, everyone, Willie here. The stage was not a protest rally or a tense political summit. It was a quiet meeting room, part of the vast, powerful machinery of German football. The statement was not a shout, but a murmur. Yet when the vice president of the German Football Association, DFB, looked at his colleagues and the assembled press and calmly suggested that boycotting the 2026 FIFA World Cup in North America must be considered a serious active option, the world of global sport froze. A single word: boycott. It landed in the heart of FIFA, not as a plea, but as a verdict. It transformed the planet's most watched sporting event, a $3 billion spectacle already locked into contracts, already sold to broadcasters, already a cornerstone of American prestige, into the greatest geopolitical gamble in sports history. In an instant, a tournament meant to celebrate athletic unity became a stress test for a fractured world. And the fuse was lit not by activists or rogue states, but by one of the most respected, stable, and powerful institutions in the game. When Germany speaks, football listens, and Germany was now saying the unthinkable: we might not come. This is the story of how the 2026 World Cup, a crown jewel event spread across the United States, Canada, and Mexico, went from a guaranteed triumph to a teetering domino. It is the story of how politics, which FIFA has spent a century trying to lock out of the stadium, came crashing through the gates. And it is the story of how two unexpected nations, Canada and Mexico, watched from the wings, realizing they held the keys to saving, or completely reshaping, the entire event, without their teams ever kicking a ball. For years, the narrative was flawless. The 2026 World Cup, the first ever 48-team tournament, was to be a monumental showcase. It was a gift to the United States, a return to the global main stage, proof of its organizational might and its welcoming spirit. The bid, won jointly with Canada and Mexico, was framed as a celebration of North American unity. FIFA executives beamed, picturing record revenue from sponsors hypnotized by the American market. Stadiums from Los Angeles to New York were being prepared. It was considered a locked, done deal, the biggest, most lucrative party in sports history. Beneath the surface, however, a different reality was curdling. American foreign policy under the Trump administration had taken a sharp confrontational turn. Allies in Europe faced sudden, shocking tariff threats on everything from cars to cheese, framed not as policy, but as tests of loyalty. The nation's southern border became a theater of highly militarized immigration policing, with rhetoric that made many around the world feel unwelcome. Internationally, America's posture shifted from consensus building to unilateral adventurism. For everyday citizens abroad, the United States began to feel less like a destination and more like a question mark. Could you travel there safely? Would you be treated with dignity? These were whispers at first, concerns voiced in European cafes and Asian news columns. They were not yet considered sports problems. Then, Germany transformed those whispers into a global roar. The German statement was not emotional, it was procedural, which made it infinitely more dangerous. Officials did not scream about injustice. They referenced history. They drew a direct, chilling line to the boycotts of the 1980 Moscow and 1984 Los Angeles Olympics, reminding the world that when great powers make sporting events into political battlegrounds, the response is often to withdraw from the field entirely. For Germany, a nation whose modern identity is built upon learning from history, this was not a casual analogy. It was a loaded signal. They were placing the 2026 World Cup into a category of events where non-participation is a legitimate, moral, and politically necessary tool. The financial shockwave was immediate and brutal. The World Cup's economic model is a house of cards built on certainty. The certainty that all the best teams will be there. The certainty that billions of fans will tune in. The certainty that corporate sponsors will see their logos plastered behind soccer's iconic moments. Germany is not just a team, it is an economic engine. German matches command some of the highest global television audiences. German stars move merchandise. German presence justifies the $100 million checks from Adidas, Volkswagen, and countless other multinationals. The mere suggestion that Germany might be absent sent FIFA's accountants and lawyers into a panic. Sponsorship contracts have clauses for acts of God, but not for acts of geopolitics. Broadcasting deals priced for a full-strength tournament would need to be torn up and renegotiated at a fraction of the cost. But Germany was never going to be alone. This is where the true collapse began. In the days following the DFB's statement, a quiet, terrifying domino effect commenced across Europe. The Danish Football Union, representing a nation whose territory of Greenland had been the subject of crude and surprising American purchase rhetoric from Trump, acknowledged a deeply sensitive political context. They did not threaten to boycott, But their careful, pained language spoke volumes. The French Federation signaled hesitation and a need for further consultation. In Britain, media that usually trumpet tournament hype began running sober analyses, treating a boycott not as fringe fantasy, but as a plausible scenario. The Spanish and Italian federations went quiet, a silence more deafening than any protest. None of these nations declared an exit. They didn't need to. They simply refused to offer the unconditional yes that FIFA depends upon. By introducing doubt, they introduced leverage. The nightmare scenario for FIFA is not one team staying home. It is a cascade. Imagine a World Cup group stage without Germany, France, England, Spain, Italy, and Denmark. You are not imagining a sporting event anymore. You are imagining a glorified friendly tournament with catastrophic debt. The brand implodes. The value evaporates. As European federations masterfully applied this quiet pressure, the focus shifted away from protest and toward solution. The question was no longer just, should we go? It became, where else could we play? And this is where the North American bid's greatest weakness became its potential salvation. Enter Canada and Mexico. While the German bombshell dominated headlines, the reactions from Ottawa and Mexico City were studies in deliberate, strategic calm. Prime Minister Mark Carney of Canada did not call for a boycott. He did not criticize the United States. He did not even mention the World Cup directly in his public statements. Instead, he doubled down on a familiar, powerful theme: stability. In speeches and diplomatic channels, he framed Canada as a nation of predictability, rule of law, and reliable partnership. He was not selling stadiums. He was selling safe harbor. The message to European leaders was pragmatic, not ideological. If the environment in one host nation becomes untenable, you have a stable, respectful, and predictable alternative within the same tournament framework, right next door. Mexico executed a parallel strategy. Leveraging its profound football culture and its experience hosting 2 previous World Cups, it presented itself as the seasoned, capable professional. Mexican officials spoke of operational readiness, fan hospitality, and a deep love for the game. No drama, no pointed comments about their northern neighbor, just a quiet, confident assurance that they were ready to host more if needed. Together, Canada and Mexico performed a diplomatic jiu-jitsu. They did not attack the problem. They presented themselves as the seamless built-in solution. They reframed the crisis. A boycott now looked less like a political strike against America and more like a logical logistical pivot toward more stable ground within the same continental event. This gave European governments the political cover they desperately needed. They could now frame a potential move not as an insult to an ally, but as a responsible decision for the safety of their players and the enjoyment of their fans. The narrative shifted from, "we refuse to play in the US," to "we will prioritize matches in venues that align with international norms of welcome and security." The irony for FIFA was exquisite and agonizing. The governing body had spent decades and billions of dollars carefully constructing the myth that football exists in a magical realm above politics. They punished players for political messages on their jerseys. They demanded that host nations provide sweeping legal exemptions. The entire enterprise was built on the fiction that the game was a universal language untouched by the messy disputes of nations. Germany's statement and the European reaction it triggered vaporized that fiction in an afternoon. FIFA was suddenly trapped. Its own tournament, spread across 3 nations, had become a perfect metaphor for the political fissures it claimed to ignore. One host nation was generating global controversy, the other 2 were being touted as sanctuaries from it. FIFA could no longer pretend the politics were separate. The politics were now dictating the very location of matches, the travel plans of fans, and the participation of its most valuable teams. The financial and existential panic inside FIFA headquarters in Zurich became palpable. Emergency meetings stretched through the night. Lawyers pored over the joint host agreement, looking for clauses that might allow for a reallocation of matches without triggering total contractual collapse. Broadcast partners were assured that everything was under control, even as FIFA scouts quietly increased their assessments of stadium readiness in Vancouver, Toronto, and Mexico City. The unthinkable was being thought. What if the United States was quietly, surgically, reduced to a secondary host? What if the opening match, the semifinals, the final itself, were shifted north to Canada or south to Mexico? For Donald Trump, the intended beneficiary of this global showcase, the situation represented a catastrophic own goal. He had wanted the World Cup to be a towering monument to American greatness, with himself presiding over the final in a packed MetLife Stadium. Instead, his administration's tactics, the trade wars with allies, the inflammatory immigration rhetoric, the transactional view of diplomacy, had turned the tournament into a liability. The World Cup was now highlighting American unpredictability, not American leadership. The very tools he used to project strength, confrontation, threat, disruption, were the reasons the world's most beloved sporting event was threatening to unravel. The ultimate power of Germany's move lay in its ambiguity. Germany has not confirmed a boycott. It may never need to. The threat itself, coming from such a credible source, has already done the work. It has forced every stakeholder, FIFA, sponsors, broadcasters, other federations, to stare into the abyss of a fractured World Cup and calculate their losses. This uncertainty is a weapon more powerful than any declaration. The 2026 World Cup will likely still occur. Matches will be played in American stadiums, but it will be a fundamentally different event than the one sold to the world. The gloss is gone. The illusion of apolitical unity is shattered. Key matches involving European powers may now be strategically scheduled exclusively in Canada or Mexico, a quiet humiliation for the primary host. Sponsors may demand rebates for the geopolitical risk. The global narrative will no longer be about American hospitality, but about a tournament that survived a near-death experience caused by politics. The legacy of this moment will reshape global sport forever. Future bids for mega events will be scrutinized not just for stadium quality and hotel capacity, but for diplomatic stability and respect for international allies. The power has subtly shifted from the monolithic, money-driven decisions of federations like FIFA to the collective will of the national associations they are supposed to govern. Germany proved that when a major football power is willing to wield the boycott threat credibly, the entire financial model of international sport trembles. For Canada and Mexico, the outcome is a historic win. They transition from junior partners in an American-led spectacle to indispensable guarantors of the tournament's very survival. Their stock on the world stage, as stable, reliable, and sophisticated nations, has skyrocketed. They won without a fight simply by being the calm in the storm. In the end, Germany's bombshell did not just threaten a football tournament. It revealed a new truth. In the 21st century, global spectacles cannot be insulated from global fractures. Sport does not transcend politics when politics intentionally makes the world feel smaller, more hostile, and more divided. The 2026 World Cup was meant to be FIFA's crowning achievement. Instead, it may be remembered as the moment the game finally, irrevocably, admitted that the stadium gates cannot keep the real world out. And once that admission is made, nothing in sports will ever be the same again.